don't think a question that necessarily gets asked a lot is, how hard is aromantic dating? Well, today we're going to find out. We're going to take a look at what some aromantic people have to say and their experiences on dating and or tips about dating as an aromantic person. Just because I think it's something that's important to talk about, because it's a really big misconception that every single aromantic person doesn't want to date is not necessarily true. So let's get into it.
If I'm aromantic, can I still date? Yes. For some people, being on the aromantic spectrum doesn't mean that they're never, ever gonna feel romantic attraction. For instance, people who are demi-romantic, they feel romantic attraction once an emotional bond has been formed first. Dating is often defined through this romantic lens, but you can make dating mean whatever fits your circumstances. For instance, some people might date because they feel an aesthetic attraction to somebody. Something about that person's personality draws them to them. Somebody who's on the aromantic spectrum might date because they know this person in a larger group, but they want to get that one-on-one time with that person. That's still dating. Whatever their reasons, aros can absolutely still date. Here's a couple things to remember if you are aromantic and you're considering dipping back into the dating pool. Discuss your attraction and what interactions you're comfortable with openly. Build trust with that person and let them build trust in you. Remember that your romantic attraction probably works different from theirs. It's okay if you don't feel that instant spark, or it doesn't feel like this storybook moment that you were hoping it would. Reflect and be honest with yourself if it's just not there. And don't feel bad for yourself if it's not. Me personally, I'm taking a break from dating. I recently realized that I'm cupio-romantic. That means that I want a romantic relationship, but I don't feel romantic attraction. I'm still working out what that means for me. But that doesn't mean that I've ruled out dating forever. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll see you out there in the dating pool.
So I absolutely agree 100% with everything that Pat just said. Also, I'm going to be linking every single content creator's info in the description, so you can go check out all of these amazing aromantic content creators. But I think it is very important for people at large to understand that being aromantic is a spectrum. There are aromantic people that will never feel romantic attraction and don't have the desire to date. However, people who are along the aromantic spectrum, such as gray romantic, demi-romantic, and other aromantic micro labels, might in fact want to date. Also, aromantic people, like just aro people, might want to date as well. I think it is very important, if you are aromantic, to, like Pat said, discuss with the other person how and what you're comfortable with and make sure that aligns with them. I also appreciate the fact that he was able to explain a little bit more about what dating potentially could mean or look like for aromantic people, or why an aromantic person or someone on the aromantic spectrum might want to date, because there are plenty of reasons that anyone, no matter your romantic orientation, would want to date someone. So yeah, I appreciate everything that he was saying. And just because someone tells you they're aromantic doesn't mean they don't care about you. They just don't experience romantic attraction in the same way. So if an aromantic person is interested in you, they're still interested in you. It's just, you're gonna have to go about it a little bit differently, have certain boundaries set up. It might not exactly feel the same way that you might date someone who is allo-romantic, but that still doesn't mean that an aromantic person who wants to date shouldn't be able to date and shouldn't be able to find someone.
Here's some dating tips if you plan on dating aroace people. And yes, you heard that right, aroace people can date and be in relationships. Tired of people just writing us off? The aroace spectrums are exactly that, they're spectrums. Many aroace people are not interested in dating or relationships. Correct. But many aroace people are. A lot of aroace people feel a certain level of romantic and or sexual attraction, and they enjoy being in romantic relationships and or sexual relationships. So my favorite tip when it comes to being in any kind of romantic or sexual relationship with an aroace person is to just talk about your boundaries right off the bat. Instead of assuming that everyone is interested in the same thing as you just as often as you are, try just asking. That is probably the biggest and most important thing I can emphasize. Ask what their comfort level is with physical touch. Ask what their love languages are and how they like to receive love. Talk about your expectations for the relationship. Talk about what you expect from the sex if you plan on having any. Talk about your deal breakers. Everyone has deal breakers and everyone has boundaries. These are all things that people can talk about in allo relationships, but they're especially especially important when you're having any kind of relationship with an airways person to avoid any kind of miscommunication. At the end of the day, if people are pursuing relationships, you have to take them at their word. So it's important to talk about what you're comfortable with and your boundaries. And it's okay if your deal breakers are not compatible. Not everyone is going to be compatible at the end of the day. And it's important to talk about that so that that doesn't come up like 5 months into a relationship, or it's not something that you avoid talking about and then you end up resenting each other. But yeah, those are my biggest tips. I feel like at the end of the day, it all comes down to just communication, because everyone on the airway spectrums are completely different. Maybe someone is totally happy having sex frequently. Maybe someone loves the romantic aspect of relationships, and you won't know that until you ask.
Yes. First of all, I love Andrew. Second of all, he literally, like, I feel like most of this is common sense. Like he said, all of this still applies with allo and allo relationships, but even more so with aromantic and or asexual, but we're going to be focusing on aromantic in this video. Aromantic relationships where all you have to do is talk about what the person is comfortable with. There are aro ace people who love romantic things, who want to participate in romantic things, even if they have a different way of going about it, or it might not be as frequent a thing that they want to experience or have in a relationship as an allo-romantic person. That doesn't mean that they can't have a amazing, wonderful connection with another human being. And literally, I appreciate whenever I talk about relationship advice for any sort of queer person in general, but especially when I'm talking about asexual or aromantic folk, talking about your boundaries is so important. Talking about your deal breakers. Like he said, you are not going to be compatible with everyone, but also that's true for the whole dating world as well. So it's okay if your needs and your boundaries are not compatible with that specific person. It is disappointing. It very much is disappointing. However, it's a lot better to have that out front and be like, hey, this is what I'm willing to do, this is what I'm not willing to do. These are my absolute no's when it comes to a romantic relationship. These are my expectations. All that in the beginning, rather than, like he said, like 5 months in, and you're like, oh no, like we didn't talk about this. But yeah, no, I definitely think that a lot of this applies to just dating tips in general, but people tend to forget that, like, you can just ask an aromantic person if they're interested or not. You'll never know because, again, like we've all talked about, aromanticism is a spectrum, so you don't know what someone is comfortable with until you ask. It's important, if you are interested, to ask questions about that person.
Or our ace community, do you guys ever feel like you may be toxic?
I want to say yes, no, maybe, because there's so many factors when it comes to relationships. Whenever I was dating, before I realized I was aromantic, I used to feel bad when I used to tell my partners, hey, I don't want to like have to see you every day. I have like my own boundaries. And then most of those said partners would be like, oh, you don't love me because you don't want to spend all your time with me. And some even disregarded my boundaries completely and would follow me to places where I said I was going to be alone. Each relationship is so different. So it's weird that people think that people's love has to be seen a certain way for it to be actual love. And when I was talking to some ace friends, if you were at that video, you would know that there's so much stuff that aromantic and asexual people communicate in their relationships more than allosexual people.
So I think this is a really important conversation to have, and it was a really good question to ask. Hey, as an aromantic or asexual person, do you sometimes feel toxic? But the thing is, her experiences and what she was talking about, it kind of showed that the other people were toxic for literally not following her boundaries. That why in the world? If someone said, hey, listen, what makes me comfortable is not having to see or talk to my partner every day, doesn't mean I don't care about you, but that's what makes me comfortable. That is a boundary of mine. And then you follow that person, like that's stalking, y'all. That's wild. That's wild behavior to me. It's not like a catch-22 of like, oh, I want you, like, I'm saying this, but like, I actually want you to like follow me. Like, I guarantee, no. She was clearly stated her boundaries of, listen, I don't, that's not something I do. I have my own personal space and that's what I like. And then clearly disregard that shit. To me, that makes the other person a red flag, not her. Like, if you are an aromantic person who feels that way, who has certain boundaries about talking to a potential partner or seeing a person frequently, it's important to set those boundaries up first, like she did, because if they do end up following you, that's a hard no. It's wild to me how aro ace people will be called toxic or be considered the toxic ones after they set up the boundaries in their relationships and be like made out to be like these horrible people, when a lot of the time it's the other person not really respecting a romantic person's boundaries that they like clearly stated. That's wild to me. That's wild behavior. I can't even like imagine like doing. But yeah. So I personally don't think it is toxic. You know what I mean? Like, inherently being aromantic or asexual is not toxic. Does that mean that there are aromantic people out there that are probably toxic? Yes. But that's true of any community. Just because of your orientation doesn't mean you're not like a toxic person. But anyway, I don't know where I was going with that. I had a thought. There was a thought coming, but I don't remember what it was. Found the thought. So being aromantic does not inherently make you toxic. And I really wish that it wasn't something that the world like kind of pushed onto aromantic people, especially aromantic people who do want to be in relationships or some sort of like PR or have some sort of connection with another person and make them feel like the toxic one. It makes me sad that like this even was a question, but I understand why the question was asked. And like I said, I think it is important to talk about in aromantic and asexual spaces. But a lot of that is like our own internalized stuff. A lot of that is us feeling like we're not good enough, we're not enough for a partner because we're not experiencing something the way they do. Just because you don't experience something the way another person does doesn't inherently mean you are less valuable as a person. You have just as much to give as anyone else. It just might be a little different, and that's okay. Just because it's different doesn't mean it's bad. And if you're an aromantic person wanting to date and be out there and find partnership and connection, you are valid. So yeah, that was my thought. I'm happy I found it. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of aromantic dating. If you're aromantic and you've tried dating, or if you have a partner, or if you don't want to date at all. I just want to hear all of your opinions and your thoughts. And if you have any aromantic dating tips, be sure to leave them down there as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.